tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening, everyone. Today we are gathered here to discuss some Dhamma based on the Buddhist doctrine, and also how to get some insights on how to apply its theories into our lives, and also to have some sort of a discussion at the end of the Dhamma sermon. And today I was invited by Mrs. Chitra Weerakoon and I am invited by Chitra Weerakoon and Saranath Weerakoon. The special objectives are to celebrate the April birthdays of Mullin Weerakoon and the late mother Samlin Kulatilake, and also to aid the Venerable Bhante during the sermon, and also wishing all the best to the Chitra who have already called into this program, and also to help all the current and future listeners of the Dhamma talk in their spiritual journey towards the realization of Nibbana. So, first of all, wishing all the best to Mullin Weerakoon, and also sharing the merits with the late mother Samlin Kulatilake, and also best wishes to Mrs. Chitra and Saranath Weerakoon organizing this Dhamma talk. The topic I would like to discuss today is mainly about consciousness and how to train in order to be happier, and also how it is related to our day-to-day life, and also the philosophical aspect of karma. First of all, I would like to take your attention that all of us, every being, every sentient being, or in other words, we can call animate ones, animate beings. Scientifically, we call animate bodies organisms. We all have experience of knowing the object, being aware of the object. That means we are sensitive to the sensation. In other words, to the object, to stimuli. So then normally we react. In our tradition, especially in Buddhist tradition, and also in some of the religious traditions in Asia, and also in some Western traditions, we call it the consciousness. Other than the body, for example, there is obviously a physical body that we are well aware of, and there is something called a consciousness by which we become aware of the outside world and also about our own self. And the main objective of Buddhism is how to train this, because Buddha has clearly mentioned that it is mainly the consciousness that brings happiness and sorrow, also progress and downfall of a living being. So if you train your consciousness, that will eventually bring you the happiness. And he has given a simile saying that an untrained or a badly trained or developed consciousness would bring you harm more than the most or the greatest enemy of one. And at the same time, the consciousness developed properly would bring benefits to us even more than our parents. The greatest benefits will normally be our parents, right? So, natang mata pita kaira anna vapiti natakha samma panihitan chitam sayasunam katokari. A consciousness that is well trained would make someone, would bring the benefits to the person to whom it belongs, or conventionally to whom it belongs, would bring benefits more than his own parents. Because parents normally, in most of the cases, are real benefactors of the children, and they always have a pure heart towards them, and they always wish the best for the children and try to give the best to them. But a well-trained consciousness would give us things more than that. Now, it's clear that the Buddha was very well aware of the fact that consciousness should be trained, and we all know that as Buddhists. So, first I would like to take your attention, what is this consciousness? Before plunging into the consciousness, talking about this, I would like to take some contemporary ideas about the consciousness. I would like to take you into some non-Buddhist doctrine to prove that the consciousness is very fundamental in our lives. When I say the fundamental, it means things that really exist. Things that really exist. It's very important to know about. This seems to be something philosophical, but at the same time we have to have a very proper understanding about these things in order to train our minds to get the ultimate happiness, because we are talking about ultimate happiness or ultimate goal. It means we are talking about things that do exist in the world. Sometimes some of you may have heard about a Buddhism that advocates about only a consciousness and everything other than that is false. This is not a Theravada doctrine, I have to say that. It is a part of Buddhism, it's a branch of Buddhism, which we call Yogacara. And it is, it's in Western philosophy, it is called idealism. Nothing exists other than the consciousness. And everything that is experienced by the consciousness is an illusion. And the Theravada Buddhism is not in that caliber. It is advocating about dualism, that the mind and the matter both exist together. So since it is quite interesting, this analogy, this scrutiny of consciousness, I would like to bring that. It is a non-Buddhist theory, but it would help you to get a better understanding about the consciousness. There was a philosopher in the 18th century called René Descartes. He was a French. And he started to doubt all the knowledge that he had or gained from their ancestors, from his past generations. And he wanted to find out the real existing truth of the world. So what he did was, he brought his own criteria. That was, if anything could be suspected, doubted, even to the slightest level, he took it as something wrong. He just wanted to believe in the things that are obvious, that cannot be objects of suspicion. So what he did was, he thought, okay, how about the small, faraway particles, faraway things? Sometimes we have misperceptions about them. For instance, if you think about a mark on a wall, sometimes we think it's a lizard or it's a certain creature, but when we get closer, we find it's just a mark by a pen or some kind of a dirt. So, but we normally we have the perception of a different thought, different object, and when we get close, we find it is something different. So he thought, if this could fool me even once, so I cannot trust small and faraway objects, because small and faraway objects, even though they manifest as certain things, it may be wrong. A better example is a mirage. We think in deserts, in a hot area, we see a water in a faraway area, but then when we get closer, we find it's not the reality. Then he ruled out the possibility that the faraway small objects are real, because his criteria was, if anything could be doubted even the slightest degree, this is not true. Then he thought, okay, what about the bigger objects? My body, my arms, my clothes. We never doubt about it. We never doubt that I'm wearing clothes or not. We never doubt that I have my hands or head or legs. So what about these things? Can I always trust them? Then he brought out another argument again. This was a very good thought experiment that he had. He brought an argument saying, sometimes in dreams, I do feel like I'm flying. I do feel like wearing some clothes, maybe like a king. But when I wake up, I find it's wrong. But while in the dream, there's no way to prove that I was dreaming or I was having a false experience, or I was having a virtual experience. So then he argued, in case if we are in a dream, like a never waking up dream, a never ending dream, how could we prove that this body is true? Because I may have a very special figure like a Superman in a dream, I may be flying, and I'm very much convinced while in the dream, if this entire life is a lengthy dream, how could we know that our experience is true? It's a very good argument. Seems like a foolish or childish argument, but one can still keep on arguing on this because you cannot prove that it was a dream or it is a dream unless you wake up. So then he ruled out the possibility of all the bigger objects. Even the body, even wearing clothes, the fact that I am wearing clothes. So he ruled out because it can be suspended, and in certain moments these bodies and clothes that I am wearing have fooled me in a dream. Okay, now what do we have to believe? That is the argument. Then he thought, okay, even within a dream, even this is a dream, now we have to come into the assumption that we are in a dream. If it is a dream, still there have to be certain things that really exist, even if it is a dream. What are the certain things? Geometry. For example, if you take the geometrical laws, even in a dream it is true. And he thought he brought another argument, then color has to exist, that's why even in a dream we see color. And another very convincing argument is extended objects. Things consume certain space. We call in philosophy, we call it extended nature. So things, even in dreams, if I see things are consuming a space, that consuming nature should something be fundamental. It cannot be just an illusion. So he brought out few things: maths, mathematics, geometry, extended nature and color. These four has to exist. Even this is a dream. That's why we are seeing them in a dream. Okay, I'm not going to talk about it in detail. Then he brought another argument. What would be the case if even in a dream, even if you have a dream, if this dream is completely manipulated by some demon, or some special being? If you have watched The Matrix, I think most of you have done that. I hope that you see that everything is an illusion in the world, according to the Matrix. Right? I think all the young generation have watched it. So then he thought, if this illusion is completely something created by a living demon, he thought that the God would never do this, because God is only benevolent and only compassionate. So therefore, if a demon would do this, how could you prove? Even geometry, even mathematics, even color would still be false. If someone keeps on arguing, you cannot prove he is wrong, because you cannot prove he is wrong unless you get out of that illusion or delusion, that is that spell that he has put on us. Then he even ruled out the possibility of geometry, mathematics, color and the extended nature. Then he came, this is the point I wanted to arrive at. And he came to the conclusion, now, even it is being manipulated entirely by a demon, still, the fact that I'm thinking has to exist. Even if I doubt the consciousness, even if I doubt whether this thinking is an illusion, it itself proves that you are thinking. Even you are being under the spell of a very powerful demon, you are seeing the world, you are seeing the world wrongly, but still you are seeing, because you are thinking. So consciousness has to be fundamental. The question that the thing that you are thinking, whether the consciousness is fundamental or not, it itself proves that you are thinking. Even everything that is known with the consciousness is wrong, still the consciousness has to exist. So Buddha was on this. I'm not comparing Descartes with Buddha, or Buddha with Descartes actually. But according to Buddhism, consciousness is something fundamental. And it is a fact. We can't prove this argument. Consciousness has to be fundamental. If there is any fundamental in the world, it has to be the consciousness for sure. That doesn't mean that the Rupa doesn't exist according to Buddhism. But fundamental, consciousness has to be fundamental. The argument then later on came on whether this consciousness is something material, is a function of a material, or is it a completely different entity. According to Buddhism, we take it as it is something other than the body. It depends on the body, but it is not the body. It's not entirely based, it's not an entirely function of the body. It's something different. And it has the power to create some differences in the body, or on the body, or upon the body, so the body works according to consciousness. So our behavior, everything depends on the consciousness. But these as being the common folks etymology, common folks belief among the societies and among the world, in the world, that we think, so based on thinking, we act. So Buddhism is solely based on training this consciousness, which is a different element from the body, but which depends on the body, so training it, and it has to be fundamental. So, entire teaching of the Buddha, he advocated that we have to be healthy, and we have to satisfy our bodily needs, that's for sure, as a layperson. But for monks, there are lots of restrictions. But the main purpose of Buddhism is to train this consciousness, which is something very fundamental in life. And how do we do that? What is the purpose of doing it? Why is it necessary to train this consciousness? That's the important part. Because the entire teachings of the Buddha is mainly because there is a rebirth. There is a life after this. The pivotal point in Buddhism is rebirth. That's why entire monkhood depends on this fact. If there is no rebirth, if everything ends here, if the consciousness ends here, the life ends at the end of this life, if it terminates, and if there is no rebirth, there is no much use of Buddhism. There is usage, because it is a doctrine that can be used to build up a good society, especially good ethics. But the main pivotal role, the pivotal point is, there is a rebirth, so in order not only to be happier in this life, but also to have a happier life in future, we have to train this mind. Then the obvious question that comes is, how do you know whether there is a rebirth? I know, it's an obvious question that you would ask this. So in order to do that, I have to also go into the theories about this consciousness. So you have to find out that consciousness is very fundamental in life. And even during the Buddha's time, some argued, can't it be that the consciousness is something material? Can't it be like, can't this entire life ends when we die? If the consciousness is the matter, is the rupa, the manifestation, what we see, what we can feel, what we touch, if it is the consciousness, can't it be the self? So it would end at the moment, and when we are cremated or when we are buried, after our life ends. So therefore, we may live a good life, but we don't need to worry about the following coming up lives. So some have that argument. And it's the prevailing idea, mostly adhered idea in the present world as well. And we call this physicalism, telling that the entire body is responsible for this concept. Because even though I say consciousness is fundamental, there is an ongoing argument in the world whether this conscious experience that we have, because there is no argument about a conscious experience. It is there and it can be felt. And it is self-proving. And it is self-evident. It proves itself. It is evident itself. It's obvious it's by itself. That's the nature of consciousness. But the thing is, whether this consciousness, the conscious ability, the cognition we call, is a very important term to know, cognition. Cognition is the ability to know about something, being aware of something, with a good focus. So, can't it be that the cognition, the cognizing ability is something, a capacity of the matter itself? Normally we attribute it to the brain. So Buddha was of the idea, no, it is something completely different. Only, now this is the point, only if it is something different from the body, a rebirth is possible. That's why I brought this point. If the consciousness is a functioning of the matter itself, and it is obvious to us that the body would break up at the death, and it would be cremated or buried and it would get destroyed, and there is no possibility at all of a rebirth. There's no possibility at all, because we know it's obvious that it will get destroyed. And only thing that it will contribute is the soil, and it will contribute to the fossils, and also for petroleum in future. So our body would become a fuel to the future generations of the posterity. But if there is a consciousness which is apart from the body, which is different from the body, which could sustain the death, which could sustain after death, or which could exist or survive after death. Because sustaining is a transitive verb, so we better say which could survive after death. Only then the rebirth is possible. So Buddha is of the idea that consciousness is something other than the body, though it greatly depends upon the body. And the entire doctrine is focused on this rebirth, the idea of rebirth. How could this happen? How it is possible? It's only possible if it is possible, and if I talk objectively, if consciousness is something other than the body, which could survive or which could exist even after the body breaks down. If it is the body, no, it cannot exist. So that's why if someone adheres to the physicalism, if someone believes the consciousness is a functioning of the brain, or consciousness is functioning of any other matter like artificial intelligence, then there is no possibility of a rebirth. No way at all. First we have to understand that consciousness has to be something other than the body. Only then we get faith in a rebirth, a possibility of a rebirth. For that I would like to take your attention to some points that makes us to believe. Personally myself, strongly adhere to the idea of dualism. Obviously, I have to adhere to dualism, otherwise I would not be a monk and spending this life and trying to train my mind if there is no rebirth. Otherwise, I will be doing something very foolish. There is no rebirth. What is the purpose of being a monk and adhering to 227 rules and also thousands of minor rules and abstaining from all these sensual things, even which our minds are tempted to do as human beings. Right? So it's obviously, if there is a rebirth and if there is a cycle of rebirth that is never ending, which we call the samsara, only if there is a hope of a liberation from this cycle of rebirth, only then the monk could make sense actually. Right? So how do we know? How do we make sense? I have to say that in meditation, when you reach a certain level, you get convinced about the rebirth. There are two ways it can be done. With strong concentration in samatha meditation, and after you have gone to a very high level of jhana, you will be able to recall your past lives and you get convinced by yourself, which cannot be proved to others, but you yourself get convinced that there has to be a rebirth, and there was a rebirth. It not has to be a rebirth, there was a rebirth. In insight meditation, vipassana bhavana, in Sinhala is called vidarshana bhavana, one rule out the possibility of not having a rebirth. He is not seeing the past lives. He is not seeing what happened. He doesn't know whether I was an elephant or a monkey or a human in the previous life. But he rules out the possibility of this being the first birth by looking into the cause and effect. So this is how it is done in two types of meditation. In samatha meditation, you have a direct experience about the past life, and you yourself will get convinced about it. You will be able to even to recall the nitty-gritties of your life. For example, what you ate 2 days ago, what you ate 5 days ago, and what you ate in 2016, July 1st. even that you will be able to recall, and that's a very special experience. And so that is gained through samatha concentration. But the vipassana concentration will not be able to recall all this in detail, but he rules out the possibility of this being the first life, and as long as the causes remain, he finds out that there has to be a rebirth, and the consciousness lineage would have existed. And he also even ruled out the possibility of a beginning of a samsara, which is a very highly debatable philosophical topic, but he himself gets convinced that there cannot be a beginning of samsara. Anyway, this is the meditative experience. But before that, before we go into the meditation experience, we have to have some logic behind it. How do we know that consciousness has to be? Always keep it in mind, consciousness has to be something apart from the body. Even though it depends on the body, it has to be a different element if it is to exist after death. A rebirth is only possible if there is a different element called consciousness in the body. In Western philosophy, we call it substantial dualism. Substantial dualism, which is the most, and I have to say that, is the most unpopular philosophical theory among the Western philosophers. Right? And Buddhism is in this category. There is a slight difference. Most of the philosophers who believe in dualism think about a self or a consciousness that would exist, but Buddha is talking about a non-self consciousness, which is a generation of lineage of actions, mental actions. We will come into that a bit later. So anyway, so we have to keep it in mind, if rebirth is possible, it has to be something other than the body. Consciousness has to be other than body. So the most opposing idea about this is physicalism, saying that the consciousness has to be something material. If I phrase it properly, consciousness has to be a function of a material thing in our body, or whatever material thing. There are three theories mainly: behaviorism, mind, brain, identity theory, and functionalism. I'll not talk about the behaviorism because it's something really basic, but still it's a prevailing idea in the world. But I'll go into the most famous ones, the mind, brain, identity theory, considering that brain itself, consciousness itself, is a functioning of the brain. This is how it is being phrased by the philosophers. Conscious states are brain states. Conscious states are brain states. You take the C fiber, for example. If I name a neuron in the brain as C fiber, if you think about anger, for example. If anger is a conscious state, this is identical to the firing of a C fiber in the brain. That's how the neurologists are concerned about the consciousness. If this is firing, C fiber is firing, and you experience the anger. So if you remove this firing, or if you prevent this firing, you will never get the experience of anger. Okay. So that is the mind-brain identity theory. And there are a lot of experiments have been done, and there are a lot of experiments that are supporting this idea. And one of the compelling ideas is there is an experiment in which I actually forgot the name of the experiment. They did experiment that one wants to switch the fingers or press a button, and they were checking the brain states. They found out that the brain was functioning even before we made the conscious decision. So they came to the conclusion. So consciousness is the outcome of the functioning of the brain. This was the Bird's experiment. But still, there are arguments. Yes, it makes sense to certain small ideas like pressing a finger or a button, but is it how it is functioning when we are taking huge decisions like whom to marry whom, or to go to which university, to decide whether to be a monk or to disrobe, or these are huge decisions in our life. So one would argue, no, these things are not functions of the brain. You cannot experience them through the brain. It has to be something other than that. The most compelling argument against the mind-brain identity theory, I think most of you would understand this, because brain is a material function, material thing. So the argument is, you go to the atomic particles, electrons, protons, neutrons, quarks, leptons and all this. How could these particles, material stuff, would have a conscious experience? That's the point here. Because it's a conscious, what do you think about a conscious experience? Conscious experience means, for example, think about seeing the morning sun. You open the window, everyone likes to see the morning light. I think most of us like to see the morning light, and most of us like to go and see the from the top of a mountain. What about the experience? We see things, we feel certain things, we have a subjective experience. The obvious question that comes in mind against the mind-brain identity theory is, could these, because brain is made out of particles by atomic particles, quarks and leptons, or in other words, electrons, protons and neutrons. You go further, quarks and leptons are there. So could these particles bring up such an experience? That experience is called qualia in philosophy. In Buddhism we call it chittupada. I may not use the Pali term. I'll try to use as much as less as possible. So how could material stuff would have such emotions? Can material stuff be emotionally active? Are they the ones who are producing such an experience? These are obvious questions. So there is always an explanatory gap between the material and the consciousness. That's the most difficult thing for a mind-brain identity theorist to prove. And it comes into the functionalism, because when some would thought, no, it's not only the brain. If you think about the artificial intelligence, which is a very, very famous topic and which is very useful to the common person world, some are of the opinion that the highly supercomputers would have a consciousness. Think about the ChatGPT. It is able to recognize what we say. It is able to give us answers, and even if you are used to, you feel like it's a human to some extent. But the question is, would it have the emotions? Even if you ask the ChatGPT, do you have emotions? You know, I don't have emotions. It itself replies to it. So the thing is, even how much developed the artificial intelligence is, it is not possible to have a conscious experience as we humans do. It cannot have emotions, the feelings, the anger. Because if you keep on asking ChatGPT 100 times the same question, it will keep on answering and it would not get frustrated. Right? Because if you do this to a human, you will get blamed and he'll feel like frustrated by asking the same question. So thing is, small idea is, the general idea is, how could the brain or any other thing like a material stuff could produce such an experience? Can they do that? It seems not. It's counter intuitive. Then another question is there, another big problem. If you have come through this physicalism, it's good for you to think about it and to have a better idea about the consciousness. If there is no consciousness called as a different element, please keep it in mind. According to modern physics, everything has to be determined. Everything is determined already, because it's a known law in physics that there is something called causal closure, that every physical act is followed by another physical act. It's called causality. And they are very much determined. You can predict what is happening in physical world. Once you have come to quantum dynamics, you may say there is a randomism, random nature in quantum dynamics. No. Yes, true, in quantum dynamics there is randomism, but it is not applicable to the bigger world. Bigger world is governed by relativity. Relativity and quantum mechanics are never compatible to each other. In the very, very subatomic level, yes, things are random, but when it comes to beyond the level of atoms, things can be predicted. 100% accurately predicted. 100% predicted, according to relativity. So, brain is made out of bigger particles. Obvious, there are chemicals, there are elements, neurons are made out of stuff. So according to physics, if mind is a functioning of the brain, brain functioning means chemical functioning. Chemical functioning is determined by the laws of physics. You can predict any physical activity according to physics if the information is given. So what happens? If things are physical, if these consciousness are outcome of brain states, or even it is outcome of any other material thing like functionalism, we fall into determinism. What happens is, I'll give a small idea. If someone kills, A kills B, okay, B does something bad, A kills it. According to physicalism, the killing happened because of the state the brain was in. So when B did this, there was a certain state of the brain in which A's brain was in. So when this input was given, it is inevitable that the B would not kill A. It is inevitable that B would kill A. You cannot prevent it because in physics there is only one outcome. So according to the state the brain was in, A had to kill B. There is no possibility that A would not kill B. Then what happens? You cannot punish the person, because if it is already predetermined, he didn't have any authority over his own actions. So everything falls in legal, and the legal system would break up. These are obvious. I'm not telling about my own ideas. These are the ideas raised by the philosophers. So, if physicalism is there, there is a big problem of subjective experience, and we fall into determinism. So it seems like, even though it can be proven with facts, seems like there has to be a consciousness or a conscious element which is apart from the body if we are not going into determinism. Only way out is there should be a non-physical element that could influence the material thing so we can make decisions and change our future course. There is the problem in dualism. I have to tell that before I go into to plunge into the consciousness in Buddhist perspective. With consciousness, this was raised by Princess of Bohemia. If consciousness is something immaterial, how could an immaterial thing would make a change in the material world? Another just question that dualism has. How could it make a change in the physical world if it is entirely immaterial? Entirely immaterial. Even heat is a material thing, is a physical thing, light is a physical thing. We are talking about entirely immaterial consciousness. How could a consciousness which is immaterial could change cause a difference in the material world? This question has never been answered properly till now for 5-6 centuries. In Buddhism, what we say, consciousness is not directly changing the body. It creates a subtle matter, and that matter would affect the body and cause the changes. Logically arguing, still the question remains, how could a material consciousness would produce something material? The question still remains. But what happens now? Either side we go, you have questions, unsolved questions, materialism, dualism, whatever it is. Then what happens? The preference, what you feel. Then we come into something called folk, we call etymology. What we feel, not folk etymology, it's called, folk, the beliefs of the general. When you experience, when you think about your own consciousness, you can feel it. And we have experienced that we think and we act. And we have the idea of regretting something. If it is everything as physical, you don't need to regret because it happened, because it had to happen in the first place. But we regret, I could have not have done that. And Buddha even would say, if you have done this, if you have done, instead of doing this, you would have been in this place. So normally even our parents, even our teachers, even the legal system punishes us because there was a possibility of changing our own behavior. There is no such a possibility. Punishment is not possible. Punishment is not. There are cases in United States courts because some people were pardoned that they had certain sickness and they didn't have any control over their behavior. So therefore, now coming back to the consciousness. Now these are the arguments against and for the consciousness being a different element. What was the Buddha's opinion? Buddha said, went to Venerable Ananda in the Mahanidama Sutta. Venerable Ananda. Oh Ananda, how could a material thing be conscious? It was a very simple statement. One statement he gave. How could a material thing be conscious? How could you believe the material thing as a self? The self is thinking. It's a thinking thing. How could this matter, made out of 4 great elements, could think? And the same question that the modern philosopher was asking. How could this electron, proton, neutrons could think? So he was bringing, okay, there has to be a different element called consciousness. Now the point comes. Now, if there is a different element and if it can be felt with the consciousness can feel it. It's not that the consciousness is aware of itself. It can be felt by different consciousness. Now I'm coming to the Buddhist spectrum. According to Buddha's teaching, consciousness is not a one element that is existing throughout the life. It arises, it vanishes, it arises, vanishes. A lineage of consciousness are going through. Because of our past karma, they are being produced again and again, but not all consciousness are outcome of past karma. We have that. But consciousness is keep on happening. It's not the single consciousness that governs the entire life. So, an experience of a one consciousness can be recalled through retrospective. Retrospect means recalling, being aware of what happened. So, we can recall what was in my mind yesterday. When I met my beloved person, what was the feeling that I had? When I went to the best restaurant I like, what was the feeling? When in the yesterday's party, what kind of a feeling I had? When someone took some alcohol, what was the things going in life? You can recall that. You can recall your own consciousness, but with a different consciousness. So consciousness is arising, passing. So this is the Buddha's teaching. So now, according to Buddha, consciousness has to be something other than the material thing. Only then it is possible to exist after life. So what is happening in Buddhism? Is the consciousness traveling from one life to another, like a bird traveling from a tree to a tree? No, obviously not. According to Buddha's teachings, consciousness would not exist 2 moments. It immediately passes away. When we think about our mother and then instantly think about our father, because consciousness has vanished, it's a different consciousness that with which we experience, think about our father. Don't think that the consciousness is like a television or the computer. In the computer, while the computer remains still, you get new pictures. It's not that the consciousness is something stable and having various objects. No, consciousness itself is the act of cognition. Consciousness itself is the act of knowing. Consciousness is in itself is an act. So when a certain act is done, it's done. A new consciousness arises. We'll be able to see when you have the rest of it, like when you experience your own consciousness. The things, the feelings, all the qualities that were in a one consciousness has completely changed and new qualities are found in a different consciousness. It can be experienced by oneself. So what happens is, at the moment of death, this consciousness is happening as a lineage, one after another. At the moment of death, this lineage would not terminate. It would continue. The lineage would continue. A new consciousness would arise in some other place when the last consciousness, depending on this body, passes away. A new consciousness will arise somewhere else. For example, if someone died in Sri Lanka and born in USA, and this would happen immediately. Even if someone is born in the divine realm, the moment it passes away, immediately it happens. It resembles the quantum entanglement, if someone has heard about this. There's a theory called quantum entanglement, which matches the theories in physics. What does it say? If two particles which are entangled quantumly are kept far away from each other, even in two different edges of a galaxy, it may not been proven in such scales because we haven't reached the end of the galaxies, okay? But it matches the theories. Something happens to this particle, immediately, instantly, the opposite thing happens to the other particle. So in the same way, when the consciousness passes away on the spot in Sri Lanka, the last consciousness of this life, the next consciousness would happen immediately in USA if you are born in USA. I don't know whether for your luck or anything. It depends on how you treat it. So, you are born. Whether if someone is born as an animal, if is born in the cat's womb of the same house, possible. It happened to Gosaka. Actually, there is a story that a man liked, but he was in a very, very strong hunger, tormented by the hunger, not having food for many days, and he saw a female dog in a house, was enjoying a meal, and he felt, oh, how happy this dog is, and he felt very happy about the dog. He liked the dog life, and unfortunately he died that night. And that attachment made his consciousness lineage to be born in and the female dog was fertile, and he was born in the womb. It happened. But if someone is born in a faraway distance, it's the same. What I want to say, it takes the same time. One consciousness passes away, another consciousness arises, it passes away, another consciousness arises. The final, even in this life, at the end of the life, one consciousness passes away, another consciousness arises in somewhere else. So what was the Buddha's mechanism here? What did he suggest? What is the reason for this rebirth? What is the reason for this rebirth? Well, if you have experienced your consciousness, you will feel that this consciousness is the act of knowing. It has a certain speed. I would use the word momentum, not a physical momentum, a immaterial momentum is there. What does it mean? When one consciousness passes away, it causes another consciousness to happen. It causes another consciousness to happen. This keeps on going like a creeper which propagates. The shoots come, and then a new shoot would come. So likewise, new consciousnesses keeps on coming. And later ones, the earlier ones are gone already. And only one consciousness exists at one time. And that's also something which is logical to experience, because if there were two consciousnesses, even by accident or even by any chance, you would have two different eyes, capital I's, and you would have a complex idea of which I am, by which consciousness I am thinking about. So it's very difficult to have two consciousnesses. So most of the philosophers even think one consciousness has to be one at a time. If there are two consciousnesses, it would bring us more confused, make us more confused. So we will come into a confusion actually. So now this consciousness keeps on going. And this consciousness, if you observe by yourself, with a calm mind, you will feel that it doesn't stop actually. It keeps on going. Why doesn't it stop? That's the next point. Why doesn't it stop? If it is, now I am talking based on the assumption or the fundamental that consciousness is something other than the matter. If it is something matter, all this talk would not make sense. If it is something other than the matter, and if it keeps on going, what would make it work like that? What would make it to continue? That is the momentum that the consciousness has. We call it Aramana Gahana Vega in Pali. So because of the speed or the momentum, this consciousness keeps on going, and that's why how much you try, you cannot stop the consciousness. According to Buddhism, even while we are asleep, consciousness in a very different state is occurring in us. That's why sometimes we do see dreams in our lives. And consciousness keeps on happening continuously, one after another. And this consciousness will not stop at the moment of death. The main reason is the craving. Craving is like a force. It's a force. It gives, this force can affect our mind and matter very much. If you like something, our mind is dragged towards that. Yeah, sometimes the things that we hate, yes, we keep on thinking and we start to dislike the person and remembering all the bad stuff the person has done. But like the dragging done by liking and the dragging done by the anger are two different drags. So our mind is fully inclined towards that object that we like. So if you love someone, maybe your children, maybe your partner, it's very difficult to forget the person, right? It always comes into the mind. Especially when we lose some without body. It's very difficult to forget the person. Mind is inclined towards the person. In the same way, all of our minds are inclined towards this life itself. We like our life more than anything else. We like to live. We like to experience the world. We like to be as a living being, living creature. We want to experience the reality. These are called tanha in Pali. The best word that we can use for this is bhava tanha. The craving to exist, craving to build a career. Forget about the sensual pleasures. We highly like the existence itself. There is a thought experiment given by some philosophers on this, and it is very much related to Buddhism actually. Now, we do crave sensual pleasures, yes, that's true. We don't need proof for that, we are self-evident about this. I don't think anyone would disagree on this. So, but still, sometimes we go through hardships in our lives. Sometimes the life is miserable and things doesn't happen as we wish, and we would want everything to change sometimes. And it doesn't change you. Okay. A thought experiment is you are given an option. Think about it. You are put into a certain machine and you are put into a deep sleep. Deep sleep means a sleep that you will never wake up from. And you are seeing a dream. You are in a dream world. A dream that will never end till you die. In that dream, you are a superhero. You are the most famous person in the world. You can fly. You are the most powerful, most stronger. Everyone is attracted to you. All the women, all the men, whatever gender you are in. And you are the number one in the world. Anyone would like to get that offer, right? Be such a person. But still, it's a dream. And there's no way that you would know you are, because when you are in a dream, you cannot know you are in a dream. That is the nature of a dream. Very rarely you go into a dream in a dream. It can happen. I think it happened to me once actually. You go into a dream in a dream, and then you first wake up from the second dream, and then you know you are dreaming, but you are still in another dream. So it can happen. But no, think about this. You are in a dream and you don't know. There's no way to know that you are in a dream, so you are in a very happy state. You are the superhero, the most attractive person, the most powerful person, the flying Superman or Supergirl. But in real life, you are in a miserable state, think. There's not enough money, marriage problems, children are not following the orders or they're not obedient, political crisis in the country, whatever, all the problems are there. You're not in a happy state. What do you think? A scientist gives you the offer. Go to a permanent dream till you die and live a superhero life in the dream, or would you like to live in this miserable state? Most of us would say, you can think for a moment, most of us would say in the long term, still, even though I am a superhero, it's still a dream. still like to be here and try to make my life better, because this is the reality. Even though there's not enough sensual pleasure, I want to be in the moment. I want to experience the reality, even though it is bitter, even though it's happening against my desire. I want to experience the reality. So therefore, the desire to live overweights any other desire to experience the reality. It's called bhava tanha. It's a very special word in Buddhism. The desire to exist. And this existing desire, this desire to exist in us, is found in us, is inherited, even in an ant. That's why when you make a noise or a sound while an ant is on it will run away. They still want to live. It is mentioned in Buddhism, the ones who are the hungry ghosts, who have died and living in a miserable state, they like to get the merits, but they don't want to die from that state. They want to come into a better status in that very life. No one wants to die and be born in a good state. That's the normal desire that we have. Now imagine, so when you share the merits with your diseased ones, never share, may the person die from the miserable state and born in a divine way. No, never do that. They'll be stunned and they'll run away. They'll not rejoice on your merit. Imagine like this. Take a good scenario. When you go to your grandmother and pay respect to her, if she says, okay, oh, may my child die and be born in the divine realm soon and experience the divine pleasures, how would you feel? Come on, grandmother, what are you talking about? Right? I want to be happier in this life. Yes, we would take if we are in a miserable state, we want to improve our life within this life. So no one wants to die. Then the question comes how about the ones who suicide themselves? Most of them suicide because they cannot confront the moment they are in. Some die, some suicide because due to old age. If an angel comes and make them younger, no, I don't think they would want to die. Someone wishes death because they are too old or too feeble or too sick. If things become okay, yeah. Because some right. Because some die because of breakups. The partner comes back, okay, only to die. There are very rare cases that people have died, especially it happened in Japan actually, due to wrong views, because these are just distorted mind states. Some die because they are fed up with the life. Fed up with the life means it's not that they are not attached to the life, they are fed up with the mental state actually. If that mental state changes, they would not commit suicide. Because think like this now, if someone wants to suicide because he is fed up with the life, while he is walking to suicide himself, suddenly a vehicle runs into his body, what happens? The instinctive reaction would be to jump away from the vehicle. Pick up suddenly. What does it mean? The inherited desire to live is still there. This is something inherited. That's why we react suddenly. According to Buddhism, when this desire is completely removed by an arahant, if a thunder strikes at his head, he would die, but he would not react. He would not feel afraid. He would not get stunned by what is happening. He would not struggle like we do. So therefore, it shows that the people who suicide are not doing because the fundamental desire to live is not there. No, it's because of some other reasons. The fundamental to live is something inherited within us. It can only be removed by the understanding of the reality, by removing the ignorance. Only due to ignorance we think this life is good and we want to keep on going. So therefore Buddha taught us to understand the reality in depth. So I was talking about the rebirth. I would conclude that the time has also elapsed actually. So the desire to live is there. It's a very strong desire. That's why in a sudden accident, the fear comes up because of the desire. So this desire is a push. It pushes our mind. It gives a better momentum to the mind. The mind itself has a certain momentum. But this desire, the moment of death, when the mind is getting weaker, it gets weak at the moment of death. It's obvious.
But this mind is being pushed or being re-energized by the desire to live. Even though the person is committing suicide, that disliking the hurt, disliking when the breath is being stopped, this desire would be active even in a latent level. So what happens, it energizes the mind and it causes the new consciousness to arise in a different state. And another thing that we normally talk is this new consciousness in the next life is produced by another energy we call the karma, which we call the karma. Karma is the one that decides on the new consciousness, because the consciousness doesn't want to stop because of the desire. It's been pushed by the desire. But the desire itself cannot choose the location where the new consciousness would arise. Otherwise, everyone will be born in the heavens after death, because everyone wants to be in a good life, right? So the consciousness, even though there is a desire, it cannot brings you to the new destination. It needs the help of something else called the karma. Karma is the force. Think about this analogy. Think about this analogy. Everyone wants to have a better life. Most of the children at the young age wants to be doctors, engineers, the rich men, always, right? And they have a desire. The desire alone will not make you take you to the place, take to the goal. One has to work for that. Only with effort one reaches that status. Sometimes to be a rich person, one may follow a wrong course of life and end up in the jail. Most of the people who are in the jail had a desire to be rich or to go to a higher state in the life, and they end up in the jail. Most of them, not everyone, a considerable amount of people. Right? So desire is there, but the final destination would be decided based on your behavior, on action. Action is karma. So if you have studied well, if someone has done the job properly, work hard, he'll be able to reach the goal according to the desire. If the actions are compatible with the goal or compatible with the society, if you have done certain activities that are not approved by the society, the crimes, yes, sometimes he may reach the goal, be rich, like drug dealers, but sometimes they may end up in the jail, or they might end up maybe a strategies, right? So therefore, the desire itself, within this life we understand, the desire cannot take us to the destinations that we want. The same analogy is applicable to the life after death. Because since the consciousness is something other than the body, and it has a momentum by its nature, and this momentum becomes weaker, close to death, but it is been reboosted by the desire to live. And then the actions that we have done would decide one of the actions would get the opportunity to bring forth a new life in a suitable destination that suits the action. This is called the karma force. Karma force. I would like to conclude the topic. So this karma brings you, now if the karma was good, it brings you into a good destination. If it was bad, it takes you to bad. How to decide the karma was good or bad? That's also something should be known by our own experience. According to the Buddha, if a karma was driven by lust, hatred, or delusion, obviously it's very unlikely that it will bring good result in the future, because it's a defiled mind. A defiled mind doesn't bring real happiness to us. That's why normally we say, don't make me angry. Why is it? Because we ourselves know it's not something pleasant, right? Sometimes, yes, attachment can bring happiness, but when you compare it with the spiritual happiness, that attachment is something restless. It is a restless state, and is a burning state when you compare with the spirituality. So Buddha had laid down the line and said, wholesome consciousnesses brings you wholesome spiritual, long-lasting happiness over the defiled states. So defiled states, if an action was done, the chetana, the intention was driven by defiled states, which we call it a akusala karma, unwholesome act. If the intention, the volition is driven by spiritual or wholesome, nice states, which we call it a wholesome karma. As a result of a wholesome karma, one would be born in a wholesome life. According to Buddhism, there are states like in an electron states. So we have good states and we have bad states, destinations. Human realm is considered as a good state. Animal realm as a bad state. Not to look down on the animals, but it is a bad state according to teaching. The ghosts, state of ghosts, yes, spiritual like spirits, it's a bad state. A hell, Buddha has talked about a hell, yes, it's a bad state. Divine realms, the Brahma realms, which are good states. So we have mainly two different states, good and bad, which we call Sugati and Dugati. In order to reach a good state, everyone has the desire to go to a good state unless you are a follower of Satan. Right? The ones who follow the Satan wants to be born in the hell. I myself once encountered a friend when I was studying in the college, not in my college actually, in a different college. And he had a desire to burn in the hell with the Satan. I was stunned by his desire, and I found out that there are some groups that desire. Yeah, some people have that desire. Bizarre desires are there in the world, but most of us would like to be born in a good state and a happy state, right? So, but it is this because anyone wants to have a good career in life, to be rich and famous, but our final goal destination would be decided mainly based on our behavior, not based on our desire actually. In the same way, even though we have a desire or we are desirous to be born in a good state, even though someone doesn't believe in rebirth, still the desire to be a good living being, to have a nice state, to have a nice experience, is still found latently, even though it doesn't believe in a rebirth. We are talking about latent desires. So therefore, everyone desires to be good, but to be born in a good state. But the karma, which gets the opportunity, there's another philosophical point here. The karmas that we do, the energy is stored within ourselves. It is another subtle doctrine of the Buddha. Energies are stored within ourselves. And one of these energies would get the opportunity to give the next rebirth in the following life. And who creates the opportunity for this karma to give the rebirth? That is the craving, desire to live. Desire to live creates the environment, the conducive environment for the karma, the past energies, one of them to come and give a result. And that karma would take us to a good or bad destination, and it would govern that life. But not everything in life is decided by karma, but that karma plays a huge role in our life. When that karma ends, another karma gets the opportunity. So the lineage is continuing. It's not the same mind stream. A new mind happens in the new life, and it passes away. A new mind arises, a new lineage is continuing, and that lineage is connected to the previous lineage because that new lineage happened because of a karma done in that previous lineage. And all the karma that were done according to Buddhism follows this new lineage, and the karma is following the being. And then when that lineage ends, dies, another karma gets the opportunity and it creates another lineage. So likewise, the beings keeps on continuing in life. Why the karma brings up another mind? If it is an energy, it is an energy. Why doesn't it bring up something, any other thing? A life or a mind? The actions we do are affected by this desire. So the karma energy because of the desire. The actions we do are affected by this desire to live. So the karma energy, instead of producing something else, produces a consciousness and a new life. Every life which is produced by the karma has to end. Karmas that we do are impermanent. Karmas that we do are not permanent. For example, I think to offer something, plan, offer, and rejoice on it. Karma is done. Beginning, middle, and the end. So it's an impermanent activity, impermanent action. If the action is impermanent, and if it has a capacity or energy, the logic would be an impermanent action would have a limited capacity. So any life that is produced by the karma has to end when the force of the karma finishes. So what happens is, as long as the craving is there, new karmas will get the opportunity to give lives in the coming lives. So what is our duty? Is to make sure that we do wholesome deeds as much as possible, because at the end of the life, since another karma would get the opportunity to give a rebirth, so to make sure that the next birth is something better or something good. So just rather than focusing on this life only, we have to make sure that we would be born also in a better destination. In order to do that, always do the good deeds as much as possible. To conclude the lecture, to conclude the talk, finally, this cycle would keep on continuing. So Buddha's teaching was not only to do good merits and to always be born in a good realm. His sole advice is to train your mind. Why the rebirth happens? Because of the karma. Why the karma gets the opportunity? Because of craving. Why do we crave this life? Because we don't understand this entire philosophy or the entire mechanism of the life. And the life itself is made out of all these mind and matter and all this stuff. No time to explain that in detail. So we think it's something very nice. So we are attached to that. And that is the ignorance. If we have the deep understanding, ignorance will be removed. When we understand the real nature of the life, there's no opportunity for attachment. When there's no opportunity for attachment, when the attachment is removed, past karmas don't get the opportunity to give a rebirth, and the cycle ends. Cycle ending means at the moment of death, there will be no rebirth, no new consciousness happening. So that is called the ultimate liberation. Then you have a question, what is the end goal? Is it the end goal to stop the rebirth? Is what is Buddhism saying? Yes, obviously it is what Buddhism is saying. That's what the Buddha's advice. Because the thing is, what the people scold Buddha, saying that you are destroying the human being. So his argument was, no, in order to destroy a human being, first of all, show me that there's a human being. Show me that there's a being. It's mind and matter. Mind and matter. Mind rising and passing, new minds are rising. Matter is there. None of them is a self. And these mind and matter in collaboration brings lots of suffering. So what I do is, and keeps on happening in new lives again and again and again and again. So what I'm doing is preventing a new rebirth, means the preventing of arising of suffering. So he termed this as dukkha nirodha, the cessation of suffering, which is the nirvana. So even though most of us would not be able to accept this or to go into that state, at least we have to develop our mind to a level to understand that the main philosophy of the Buddha, that's the key point here. And to make sure that we don't get into a miserable state after death while we are striving our best. Please keep it in mind, this is not to negate the pleasures in this present life, not to discourage of present life success. But in order to be completely successful, one has to make sure that we are not only successful not only in this life, but also in the life to come. And finally, since every life ends and new life begins, the cycle continues, and it doesn't make sense to a wise person. The best would be to end this one day. So the takeaway message would be, consciousness is fundamental, it's something other than the matter. And since consciousness is something other than matter, it could exist after death, and the new destination would be decided based on the karma, and the desire is the one would creates this conducive environment for a rebirth. So what happens is we make sure that new good karmas are done, so we'll have a good destination. And finally, we make a resolution that one day we have a deeper and deeper insights, and finally eradicate all the desires to the life, and finally get rid of this cycle of rebirth. And wish you all the best, and may all your desires be fulfilled, and one day may you be able to attain this ultimate liberation called nirvana. Yeah. If you have few questions, yeah, you can ask few questions. Someone is interested? Welcome to do that. Anyone from the audience, yeah, welcome to do that.
Bhante, ladies first, I guess.
Okay.
This is Chitra. As you know, in Western countries, there are a lot of meditation, mindfulness retreats and programs. And what can you, how do you advise to a person who wants to start meditation practice? You think we need to have certain knowledge before we start practicing meditation? Because I see when you explain, it's deep knowledge that we have to gain. Do we have to know most of the facts about Buddhism to start meditation, or is there any advice you can give to a person who wants to start meditation?
Yes, it depends on what is your end goal. If you're talking about just calming the mind and living a stressless life, or being successful in our work, if you want to get that help from meditation, yes, just pure mindfulness on breath in day-to-day life or the present moment would suffice. That would be enough, because that would remove our hindrances, defilements from our mind, and which would make our mind more flexible to attend to our day-to-day work and to be out of stress. That was if the aim is to achieve that. But if someone is thinking about a liberation of completely removing the defilement, I'm not talking about suppressing the defilement, completely removing the defilements and coming into noble states and stopping the rebirth one day. The deep philosophy that I was talking. Yes, in order to achieve that, you have to have a higher degree of knowledge, otherwise it won't be possible. Then you can obviously ask the question, did the people in the Buddha's time had such knowledge when they got enlightened? Yes, that's because they were different beings. For example, if sometimes in our colleges, we had some super marks guys, and there's a teacher would explain the theory once, and he understand, and he is even able to explain it to other students. Even the others have no idea how did he get this knowledge, how did he understand this. The same teacher was telling the same words, and both of us heard the same words, but some has completely understood the entire theory, and he is also able to solve the problems and even to teach others. But for this normal ordinary person, he didn't have even clue about what was going on. So likewise, there are speciality of beings. So according to our tradition, the Buddha met were special ones. So they were able to stop the rebirth, having even listening to short Dhamma talks and short talks. So therefore, if our purpose is to end the rebirth or to get fully liberated, yes, one needs to have a very solid, good understanding about the Dhamma, because if you explain the Vipassana meditation stage by stage, what I explain is the fundamental theories. You need more than that actually, but it's very basic and fundamental what I taught today. So then, then one can also have this kind of an approach. One, rather than thinking about a rebirth or stopping the rebirth or liberation, can't we just enter into Buddhism through meditation? Yes, as a spiritual thing. Yes, we can have spiritual experiences, but only thing that you should not get fooled by the spiritual experiences that you get by suppressing the defilement. That's not the end of the goal. That's not the end achievement of Buddhism. Because when we meditate, yes, we can have a spiritual experience, and because this kind of spiritual experience were existing already before the Buddha was born. Even Bodhisattva himself went to meet two great ascetics who were very renowned ascetics of the era, and he experienced that happiness, and he found that this is not the path, this is not what I was thinking, what I was planning. Then he gave up and found the Eightfold Noble Path. So what we have to know is, even after becoming enlightened, he taught these various meditation subjects, but some are just to suppress the defilements and to calm the mind for tranquility. So if that is our purpose, you don't need much knowledge. You just need encouragement. You just need the desire to be calm and knowing the benefits of being suppressing the defilement. That would suffice, and that would be enough for you to practice meditation. So in that case, we have to elaborate the benefits of that, of having such a good mind or a calm mind. But that is not the end of the story, because there were ascetics in the past, during the Buddha was alive, who had a very powerful concentration, and even Bodhisattva trained under them actually. And that's not the end of the goal. So what we have to understand is, so it depends on your goal. We just want to. So what we can do is, yes, we can enter into Buddhism or to get closer to Buddhism by practicing such meditation, especially mindfulness meditation, being on the present moment or focusing on the breath. That would gives you, because then you will start to feel, okay, this makes sense and I'm very comfortable. So why don't I go into much deeper studies of Buddhism and get more knowledge and try to find out the philosophy behind this? Yes. So my answer would be, depends on your intentions and objectives.
Bhante, since I'm old enough now, my intention is to end this samsara maybe sometime in another million years. But to make my stress level out, that is, I see that as a Western style of doing meditation. But as a Buddhist, born Buddhist, I want to do the meditation. So what advice you can give me, kind of prerequisites that I need to do if I'm doing meditation, but I want to know I'm on the right track. So you think I have to have a good Kalyana Mitra to assist me and listening to Dharma, which path I should take?
So you're talking about getting rid of the samsara. That is your main objective. At the same time, you have to get rid of the day-to-day stress, right? So see, obviously that is the correct path, because in order to get rid of the samsara, you have to be free from the day-to-day stress. Obviously, it has to be achieved in the first place. So yes, it's always good to have a good teacher, obviously, because this is a path that even the Bodhisattva was unheard of. He found it by himself. And there are many instances in the Buddha's era that many had walked on the wrong paths and thought to have got liberated, but have not. So it's always better to have a good teacher. But still, if you are talking about some basic meditation subjects such as practicing metta or loving kindness towards others, or to focusing on the breath, I don't think you need much assistance of a teacher, but the basics you have to learn: how to focus, what would be the object, what should be the attitude. The basic steps has to be followed. So you will be able to get this advice from most of the teachers, most of the Buddhist teachers. And obviously you will be able to get that knowledge. And then what I would say is, while you are practicing and calm down yourself in day-to-day lives, try to follow a good Dhamma course or to try to get your knowledge, proper knowledge on Buddhist teachings, which is very vital, So, because if I explain, as I understand Vipassana meditation, there are very basic things that you have to know before you understand the non-self nature, before you understand the suffering, before you understand the impermanence. And one would say, no, it's easy to understand, but you have to understand it to a very deeper level, and especially the nature of nirvana, because in order to get rid of samsara and focus on nirvana, or to attain the nirvana, I would say, one needs to have a deep understanding about the sankata and asankata, two states. These are very vital. So therefore, I would say, keep on doing the normal meditation practices that you do. And if some vipassana can be done, like seeing the changing of sensations in the body and changing how the mind changes, at the same time, in most of the cases that I have encountered with most of the devotees, I would rather tell them to continue with their practice, like seeing how the sensations change. I don't know what type of practice you're practicing actually, and focusing on the breath, or practicing some metta. At the same time, develop or get a good knowledge base about the techniques and about Buddhist teachings, and that would help you to incorporate that knowledge into your meditation practice, and that would surely help you to reach your target.
Sad. Everyone said sad.
Can you read out the questions? Can you read out the questions, Mrs. Chitra? It's in the chat box. Because I logged out the Zoom. Right.
I have a Bhante Johnny Weerakoon. There's Mariamma. The question I have, we carry from life to life this karma that reveals itself in our lives. But then the question I have is, how does that still affect our autonomy, our free will to make decisions that reflect our own autonomy, but it isn't sort of predetermined by our karma? And I guess it goes back to that sort of matter versus consciousness, physics versus consciousness.
Okay. Thank you for your question. I couldn't hear your name well.
Shanaka.
Shanaka, okay. Shanaka, right? Shanaka, right?
Yes.
Okay, Shanaka, thank you for your question, actually. I'll rather give a more descriptive answer to this. As you said, in physical world, everything is determined according to the physics, laws of physics, and even the best physics in the world, except the fact that if everything is material, the world has to be determined. And there have been, if you are aware, that there have been certain researchers going on for a number of years, that how to understand the free will with brain science. But always you will end up that there cannot be a free will. You cannot explain the free will unless you are a compatibilist. Compatibilism is still under determinism, actually. So it seems like there's no free will. Then, as you said, you touched the real, to my understanding, as you raised the question, you touched the very important point. If the karma is determining the consciousness, I hope you can hear me, because I cannot. Okay, right. So, okay. So, if karma is determining or determining the consciousness for the next birth, how could we are in the autonomy, or how could we still have the free will in decision making? I would rather say the karma would not negate the free will, because karma in Buddhism is affecting only the part of the life. But there is a bigger problem that I will attend later at the end of my answer, because your question was mainly on karma. So what Buddhism says is, karma gives the rebirth, and there is something called a fundamental consciousness in life. In Theravada Buddhism, we call this Bhavanga Chitta. You cannot find it in canonical texts. We find it in commentarial literature. And we find it in Abhidhamma actually. We consider Abhidhamma as a canonical text because some doesn't like to call it canonical, but as a Theravadian, we would say it's canonical. So there is something called a Bhavanga Chitta. You don't find this in sutras actually. Bhavanga Chitta. It is found in the Buddhist literature, and I'm explaining based on Theravada tradition. So this is the Mula Chitta. It keeps on arising and passing. The Mula Chitta. And Mula Chitta means the fundamental consciousness. All the consciousness that we experience in our life are just outcomes of this consciousness. When certain consciousness, the active consciousness I would call, are present, the fundamental consciousness is not there. It's not existing. Temporarily ceased. New consciousness are happening. And then in the active conscious stream stop, the fundamental consciousness still keeps on arising. And again the active consciousness comes. The karma is affecting this fundamental consciousness, not the active consciousness. So among the active consciousnesses also there are some weak ones which I don't want to go into detail in Abhidhamma explanations, which are also affected by karma. Anyway, just keep it in mind, the karma is affecting our fundamental consciousness. So the karma decides its nature. So what happens is, our active consciousness, the nature of our active consciousnesses are also highly influenced by the nature of our fundamental consciousness. Now, if I take this as a fundamental consciousness, these are the active consciousness. So these fundamental active consciousness, nature of active consciousnesses are mainly like highly influenced by the fundamental consciousness. So, for example, if this fundamental consciousness is weak and it doesn't contain the seeds of wisdom, I would use the word seeds of wisdom in it, the active consciousnesses would not reach to the level of spiritual attainments, jhanas, maggapalas and all this. But if it has the seeds of consciousness, there is a possibility if someone strives, he may have, his active consciousnesses may reach to higher levels. That's what happens to animals, according to Buddhism. They are born with an unwholesome mind due to an unwholesome karma, which produces a weak fundamental consciousness in their life. That would be the first consciousness and the subsequent consciousnesses. Whenever there is no active consciousness, this fundamental consciousness is present in our mind. So since it is produced by a weak karma, unwholesome karma, it doesn't have the seeds of wisdom. That is not to say they cannot have wisdom. Seeds of wisdom are missing. Seeds of some spiritual qualities are missing, such as desire to do good things and all this. So what happens? Their active consciousnesses will be limited. It will not have, it cannot reach to the level of a human being. Never. That's why we normally say, if someone is born as an animal, he would never be able to attain Maggapala and so forth. Now this is applicable to humans even. There are some humans who possess a fundamental consciousness with the seed of wisdom and some without the seed of wisdom. So only the ones who have the seed of wisdom will be able to have spiritual attainments. Others can have success and wisdom in the life, but not the spiritual attainments according to Buddhism. So what happens is karma delimits the ability of the active consciousness. It's not completely determining. Active consciousnesses are not governed entirely by the karma, but it is limited by the karma. The capacity would be limited. If the fundamental consciousness doesn't have the seeds of wisdom, it would never, the active consciousness would never have the spiritual attainments. Now take this as an example. Now think, if I say in this audience that I'm going to run Olympics next, now it's coming, right? 2024 it's coming. I think it's Paris, right? So if I say I'm going to run for somehow magically I got the tickets or the allowance, and I'm going to run 100 meters in Paris Olympics. You would say, okay, Bhante, but inside all of you would think, how could you run 100 meters? You are not trained for that, and your body doesn't suit that. Obviously, you know I'll be the last. No doubt about that, right? Why is that? Because my muscles are not trained for that. My body is not trained for that. None of you will be, any of you runs would end up in last, unless there is a professional athlete over there. Don't get insulted. I'm assuming that there's no professional athletes in this Zoom meeting. So, therefore, what were the reasons? Because if you take that my capacity to run the 100 meters under 10 seconds or under 9 seconds, my body doesn't suit that. Sometimes, some people by birth, we would be able to decide that this person would never be able to run 100 meters below 10. Some bodies are like that. Because that body, that muscles cannot have that stamina, strength, whatever the technical terms. I'm not fully aware of that. So it cannot reach to that capacity. So we would surely say a person not well trained and not having the actual needed figure, the muscles, the tissues and everything, but bones or whatever, is not capable of running 100 meters below 10 seconds. Because if the fundamental structure of the body doesn't support that kind of a outcome. The same way, this fundamental consciousness decides the limit. Any person could run. I could still run. I could increase my speed, but I'll never be able to run 100 meters below 10 seconds. Because my body has limited my capacity. And no human, I assume, would be able to run 100 meters in 5 seconds. I don't think any human would be able to do that. Because the human body itself has confined this ability. So in the same way, the fundamental consciousness confines our capacity in one life. But that is not to say everything of the active consciousness is fully determined by the karma or the fundamental consciousness. Since I can do various activities under the confinement of my body's capacity, I can do various things. I'm not doing only the things that are determined. I can do various things, but within the capacity of my body. In the same way, the active consciousness can function good and bad, increase and it may decrease, but within the limitations governed by the fundamental consciousness. And that nature of fundamental consciousness is governed entirely by the karma that gave the rebirth. So it doesn't fall into determinism. Still, he has the free will. Still, he has the active consciousness still have the free will, but it's a limited free will. It's a limited free will. It's not a fully liberal free will. Libertarianism. I'm not talking about political libertarianism. There is a view called libertarianism that is talking that person can do things as they want. But according to Buddhism, there is a free will. There has to be a free will. But it's been limited by the nature of the fundamental consciousness that gave the birth in a certain life. So, karma, because the thing is, active consciousnesses are not produced by the karma. Only the fundamental consciousness. Then some other few consciousnesses are produced by the karma. Active consciousness are happening based, we are making the decisions here, right now. So, free will. Karma would not negate the free will. If someone advocates, every consciousness in our life, every decision in our life is based on the past karma, that would prevent we call libertarianism. We will lose the freedom. We will not have the free will. So therefore, karma expounded in Buddhism is not making us to fall into determinism. But something new I want to add. Some of you will not be able, would not like to appreciate this idea at once, but this is a proven idea in philosophy and it is actually true. Believe me. If things are dependent originate, if everything is dependent on something, dependent origination, the word we use is paticca samuppada, the famous word. If things are dependent origin or things have origin depending on causes, if we shall use the word causality, If causality is found in the consciousness, in the world, then you cannot get out of determinism. All the effects are governed by the causes. So think about any moment of given causes, there has to be one outcome. Unless you bring randomism into it. So therefore, forget about the karma. You think everything is dependent originated. Everything has, how do you call it? Origins depending on the cause. I'm not able to give the proper grammatical sentence for that. Beg your pardon. So if things are caused by causes, you cannot get rid of determinism. It's a proven theory. Don't worry. It's a proven theory. So then what happens to Buddhism? Because all of us know that dependent origination is one of the fundamental theories in Buddhism. Yes, true. So you have to separate the two things. Every consciousness arises due to a cause. It's not only karma. There are many other causes, which we didn't talk in this talk. Every matter is a production of a cause. Yes, Buddha's teachings are dependent. Buddha teaches a dependent origination. Paticca doctrine. There's no doubt about that. And that is a very basic fundamental teaching in Buddhism. You cannot negate that as a Buddhist. Everything arises depending on causes, but not every decision is completely governed by causes. This is the point. If every decision is governed by causes, solely governed by causes, you have no free will. Forget about it. Every consciousness arises depending on causes, but the decisions that you make with consciousness has to be, if it is random, is more dangerous than determinism. Determinism, actually, you can predict, but if random is like it's like a mad dog. You don't know what is going to happen. You cannot have any sort of restraint. So Buddhism never talks about entire randomism. No. Consciousness cannot be, the decisions can never be random. No. It may be random to some extent, but when you go deeper and deeper into the doctrine, you find that there can be some random things in the conscious world, how the karma gets the opportunity and all these, but still they are debatable. But for that, you have to study the Dhamma a bit deeper. Seems determinism plays a huge role in Buddhism. Why do I say that? I think most of you are aware that in Buddhism and also in Hinduism, some are able to see the future, developing their concentration. How it is possible? And we claim that the future, the foreknowledge, spiritual foreknowledge, not divine foreknowledge, spiritual foreknowledge is almost accurate. Why is that? Things are almost determined. Things are almost determined. But there is a window for free will. Now take this as an example. If someone comes here with a gun and starts to shoot me, there can be few outcomes. Either I may fight with the person. I have to be frankly true. I'm a Putujana. I may fight with the person. I may run sometimes. Or sometimes I may face the death, okay, peacefully. I contemplate because I'm not an Arahant, so I will have a rebirth. So I have to make my mind. And I'm pretty much sure I'll be born in a good realm because of my sila and my conduct. I'll face my death. But sometimes my instinct it would react and hit him, try to save myself. I'd run, or I may sometimes scream, obviously. Or sometimes I may face my death if I can maintain mindfulness. 4 options. But if an atheist is sitting here who doesn't believe in rebirth, he may have all the outcomes, yes, 4 outcomes, but he will face the death peacefully, if possible, but he will not contemplate anything to be born in a good destination because he doesn't believe in a karma, in rebirth. So I have another option that why I was calm and I was mindful and I was contemplating something wholesome because there was an intention in me to be born in a good destination, which he didn't have. So the decisions that we take are highly determined by the causes. Our education, our cultural influence that we had, my mind state on that moment, all have determined, all have made like impact in my decision making. But still, a Buddha would say, this is how I see this, Buddha would say, given this mental state, he is very probable, he's likely to run. But given this mental state, he would face the death happily. But given this mental state, there's a very high probability that he would fight with the fighter. But still, it's a probability. There has to be at least a 5% of probability to act otherwise. That's why we regret. So therefore, even though Buddhism is talking about dependent origination, every conditioned reality origins due to causes, but not every decision is fully governed by causes. That's the point. It's governed by causes, but there is always a room for free will. I'll conclude my answer giving what the Buddha has said to the rich man who became a beggar and ended up in the hell. One time he was walking in Rajagaha or Savat, I forgot the city actually. He saw a beggar husband and wife who were very feeble, very old, and who were staying near a wall and begging for food. And he smiled. Not at their agony, but he smiled. And Ananda asked, Venerable Ananda, why did you smile? Because Buddhas do not smile without a reason. And he said, do you see these two couple? This couple? Yes. They were the rich merchants of this Rajagaha. Had both of them invested their money in a proper way, in whatever they would have done, they would have, during the young age, they would have been the number one rich man in the city. Number one rich man in the city. Prasad, may I recall, yes. They have been the number one rich man in the city. But had both of them ordained in the Buddha's dispensation, husband would have been an Arahant, the wife would have been an Anagami. Had they done the same during the middle age, either they would have been the second rich family, or the husband would have been an Anagami, the wife would have been a Sakadagami. Had they done it in the last stage, at least when they got old, Pachimavaya, they would have been third rich family, or the wife would have been Sotapanna, while the husband would have been a Sakadagami. But now they didn't invest themselves or the money in a proper way, so they end up being beggars, begging for money in the city, and finally they will end up in a bad hell. Now think, this was the Buddha's statement. If Buddha has a foreknowledge because of his spiritual capacity, if he were to predict this during their prime age, the couple's prime age, he would have said to Ananda, I see, given all the conditions, with my vast knowledge, spiritual knowledge, I would see if they invest at the prime age, they could be the richest family, or if they become monks, they would have that spiritual attainments, and this would happen if they do it in the middle age, and this would be the outcome if they do it in the later age. But if they do not invest themselves properly in any of the three ages, they would end up as beggars and find a bad destination. So all these four possibilities, the three possibilities that he advocated, and which was the real outcome, the fourth possibility, all four were possible at the young age. So what makes this difference? If it was physical, no, there cannot be two outcomes. Forget about 4. Had they invest themselves properly, had they invest their money properly, so it depends solely on the decision that they were making. So isn't the decision completely governed by all the causes? This is a big argument in the philosophy. Even the causes, according to Buddhism, as far as I know, there has to be at least a slight possibility of making a decision, because causes are not determining the decision. Causes would determine the effect, outcome, reality. But causes are giving a probability to the decisions, not deciding the decision. The realities would be decided. What kind of a reality outcome out of a cause is already decided by the doctrine. If this is the cause, this is the outcome. It's very clearly mentioned. But the decisions would always be probabilities. So, since there is a capacity to take a decision, Buddhism doesn't fall into determinism. Forget about randomism. It's a libertarian doctrine, but we call it confined libertarianism. It's not fully liberal. Like liberal means you cannot do whatever you want and achieve anything. No. The thoughts, thinking, decisions will be governed. That's why it says atheist would never make a decision to prepare himself for the next life. So his decisions are limited, but still he may fall into any of the 3 decisions, whether to fight, to run, or to face the death happily. So therefore, as you asked the question, it was a descriptive explanation. Karma doesn't negate doesn't make it to fall into determinism, but Paticca seems to make the doctrine make Buddhism determine a doctrine of determinism. But since Paticca is talking only about the arising of reality, Buddha is not talking about the decision making. We can find ample of evidences in the doctrine to say that decision making is not solely governed by causes. So since decision making probabilities are there, Buddhism doesn't fall into determinism. That would be my answer.
Thank you, Bhante. That was great. There are also some questions in the chat.
Yes, can you read it for me? Yes.
Yes, I can read from Yanuli Wikramasinghe. If consciousness gives the next birth, why we have heard some lives have a period without getting a life? Is it true?
I think the question comes without getting a life, without getting a human life or a specific animal life. So the transition period itself is a life, right? So there's no time that the being would live without a consciousness. According to Theravada teaching, there are 2 occasions that one would be free from consciousness. There is a special realm called Asanya Satta in one of the Brahma realms, that one is free from the consciousness throughout the entire life. The body exists like a statue, and it's very high bliss. Then you would still ask the question, how could it be a bliss? But in order to explain that bliss, you have to talk about the suffering of the consciousness and all these. So just keep it in mind, it is one of the very higher blissful states in the world, in which the consciousness is not existing throughout the entire life. And the next is, there is an attainment of Arahants and Anagamis, that in which you live without the consciousness for a period of time. In human realm, maximum of 7 days. In the Brahma realms, it can be extended to eons actually. So other than that, always there is a birth. There is a consciousness. And all the time someone is in a certain life. There is no such a period, for example, for example, Mr. A died 1 p.m. and his next life happened at 2 p.m. No, this is not possible in Buddhism. It has to happen immediately. The consciousness would not stop unless there is a specific reason. But it never stops in this life. While we are asleep, still the consciousness is present, even though we are not aware of that. And yogis claim that they can recall that consciousness while asleep. So consciousness is keep on happening. It comes, like for example, if you stack up a bunch of papers, you take out the paper from below, the other would immediately come to the next position. So likewise, consciousness, another new consciousness would keep on following when the previous one, the preceding one falls down or vanishes. In the same way, the last consciousness in the body vanishes, another consciousness would happen. So sometimes we hear about stories that some were wandering in this here and there. In some Buddhist stories we have, even in different sects, still it's another life actually. It's another life. But if you're talking about Antarabhavada according to Tibetan Buddhism or some Mahayana sects, so they would say the mind have come out from the body and still he's living in the same body. But none of the Buddhist sects would say there is a period without consciousness if you are not talking about the Asanya Satta. So therefore, the question seems, I assume the question was asked based on that it takes times to be born in the, like, somewhere without a life floating in the sky and so forth based on the information. But that itself is a life. He was aware. The person is aware of what is happening. So that doesn't mean that the consciousness was missing.
Bhante, there's one more question that I see in the chat from Lasanta. Bhante, nice tie into physics and quantum mechanics. Thanks for the knowledge. A part of the fear of death is the visible part of the act that centers on the physical pain and the suffering of the body. Are there advices to circumvent this bodily suffering, which is circumventable, might even lead to a pleasant experience of death?
Circumventable, I don't know the word.
To
what does it mean?
Sort of get around or not experience.
Okay, to avoid it, to get around it. Okay, right. A part of the fear of death is the visible part of the act that centers on the physical pain and the suffering of the body. Yes, part of the fear of the death. Yes, obviously, not the entire spectrum of fear. And are there advices to circumvent these body suffering? Yes. It's first of all, I don't have the experience at the moment. So it's because I'm still alive in this life actually. So what is mentioned in the books is like you have to be mindful, and it is mentioned that almost all the beings who die would experience physical pain. Obviously, when the breath is holding or stopping, there is a lack of breath. But there are some instances that the beings have died peacefully. But still, I assume that everyone would experience some sort of a physical pain. I think it is inevitable. In my opinion, the doctrine says that almost all the beings would experience a severe pain when they are dying. Yes, in order to avoid that, a concentration, which is very, very, very difficult, but which would be possible, to be in a very concentrated state, like in a good samadhi. Because when your mind is well concentrated, you don't feel the physical effects. Possibility is there. So if someone can maintain a very strong samadhi, like cutting off the relationship of sensations with the mind, bodily sensations, yes, one may experience the death without feeling pain. Possibility is there. Very difficult, but one can give a try. So if someone is in a strong samadhi, yes, that he would not also feel the mental fear. That would be the best. Even Anathapindika, who was a Sotapanna and who was born in a blissful realm, was suffering a lot before death. And in the Anathapindika Sutta, he mentioned to Venerable Sariputta, it's like, I feel like two men are dragging me from two different sides and my head is being held by a iron and chain, and it's been dragged to different sides. So even he himself, who was a Sotapanna, had done all these merits, and one of the Buddha's foremost devotee, donor actually, was experiencing such suffering. So it shows that just having done good deeds would not stop us from experiencing the pain in the death, at the moment of death. So the best would be to have a good concentration. If you have developed a good, very strong concentration, very high possibility that you will. And there are instances that people have died with such strong concentrations. And according to the theory, you cannot feel a pain at that time. Not possible. And also you will not feel the fear of death. And yes, at the same time, I will also advise to get rid of fear of death. That is to prepare ourselves for death. Then one would still ask the question, why do we think about death while we are supposed to live in the present moment, and why you are thinking about something negative? It's something like this, I would say. Now think about a person who has taken opium or some drugs, and he's in a different mind state. He's in a different world when he has taken drugs, and he doesn't feel anything about the future. He doesn't know anything about, but he doesn't feel anything about he doesn't recall anything that is going to come tomorrow, any of his miserable states in his life. He completely has forgotten them. He's in a different state of mind. I think now when from outside, we would feel, okay, he's drunk, or he's under the influence of drugs. But whenever he comes out from this effect, he has to face the reality. So he would say, I'm in a very blissful state, like he's over the moon actually, in that sense. In Sinhalese we call it Halain, but objectively speaking, yes, we would not like to be in that state and to forget all the miseries, because we know when you come out of it, you have to face the reality. So therefore, contemplating about the possibility or the true possible future is not something. It's not something negative, because if you are thinking about unnecessary fears about the future, then it doesn't make sense. But if you are getting ourselves ready for the actual future which we are going to face, that's being smart actually. So any wise person would prepare himself for any danger. That's why we save money. Why do we save money in our bank accounts? Because we know anytime any of our family members could get sick. So we need to have some sort of a buffer for that. So no one would say getting ready for the future, unpredictable disasters is not a bad thing. So therefore, death could befall us at any time. And if you believe in a rebirth, so why don't we get ready for that? So obviously, one has to think and to be ready. That's the contemplation of Marananusati. Like knowing that the death could happen at any time, and so I have to be always try to be mindful and be good. So the next birth, I will not regret about the next birth after being born in the next life. So if we can do that, yes, the fear of death will be lessened to a great extent. And in addition to that, on top of that, one would be able to face the death of a beloved one, a sudden death of a beloved one. Once the Bodhisattva was farming with his son, whole entire family, a very, very lovely family he had. A son, a daughter, a daughter's wife, and that is daughter-in-law, and also Bodhisattva's daughter, and a slave woman, a servant. And all of them were contemplating on death, and they were very mindful about their behaviors, and they never did any akusalas. And while the son and the father were farming, plowing in the fields, plowing in the fields, suddenly a snake bit the son, and the son died on the spot. The son died on the spot, and the Bodhisattva, it was a shock for a father to see the son dying while he was there. He couldn't save him, and Bodhisattva was ready for that. Actually, he knew that it could have happened at any time, and because now crying doesn't do anything, right? Because the dead person would not wake up. So what he did was he sent a message to his family, telling that today bring only one parcel of rice and don't send two. All of you come a bit early, and having dressed yourself in white color with some flowers. And he sent the message through a messenger, a walking villager who was walking nearby. Then he informed, and it was informed to the mother. And the mother suddenly asked, who sent? Mother knew someone has died. And she asked, who sent the message? Your husband. Father. Okay. Then she knew. The son. That's the message of the son. And she informed everyone. And none of them were crying. It's a very remarkable story in Jataka. And the Bodhisattva kept his son's body under a tree and he started plowing. Because objectively speaking, you have to do your work, right? Lamenting on someone who has died doesn't make any sense in the reality. Nothing is going to happen. That person is not going to come, not going to wake up. So only you are just delaying your own work. That was the capacity of the Bodhisattva. That was extreme. It's an extreme story. Uraga Jataka, you can find this in Jataka stories. And then they were all gathered, and he ate the meal brought by his wife, and they made a pyre and burned the child. And the child was born as a divine being, and he saw what's going on, and he wanted to check my status of my family in the previous life. And he came to the father and asked, who is this? This is my son. This is a living human. Are you burning a cow or someone? No, it's a human. It seems like an enemy. Why do you say so? Because you are not moved by any. You don't show any sorrow in it. You seems like very, very pleasant and calm. No, this is my son. Or maybe he's a very stubborn son that you wanted to get rid of. No, he's a very obedient, very nice, well-behaved son. Then why are you crying? When a snake removes its all skin, he removes it and goes away. So my son left his body and went. So we all have to do that. So when time comes, everyone dies. So I'm not worried about it. He's following the nature. Then he went to the mother and asked, who is this? This is my son, beloved son. And why are you not crying? Because the father maybe he has a strong heart. He's a man. Mothers, obviously, they cry a lot when something happens to his child. You are a mother, why are you not crying? So she said, I didn't invite him to my womb. He came by himself. And when he left, he just left it without informing me. So what can I do? I'm not going to cry because of this death, something which was inevitable. Because even if I hit this body with a stick, nothing is felt. So even if I cry, the person will not feel anything. For what I'm crying? Normally we cry to show that I feel about you, I'm sad about you. So nothing is felt, and it is the nature of the nature of the world. So why I'm crying? So then he went to the wife. Then why are not crying? Because and he said he's my husband, and he or she also gave an answer. I forgot actually. Then he went to the sister, and she said she's a very beloved brother. She look after me very nicely. Why are not crying? And then she said, if I cry, only outcome would be my brother is not going to wake up, that I will be ugly. So my father would have difficult time to offer me to another husband because I will not be eating and I will be crying. I don't want that actually. So the dead person is dead. So I don't want to cry on something that is because it doesn't make sense. So likewise, everyone in the family, even the servant answered very wisely So that is the outcome, that they would not lament over a sudden death. If we get ready for death, and we will be able to face our death very happily with a very unmoved mind. And also in a sudden death of a beloved one, we'll be able to face it very strongly. Final one last thing, when you contemplate on your death, on others' death, yes, it's true that you will not have your level of happiness will decrease, that's for sure. You will not be able to enjoy as before, because that negative aspect will be governing your body. But the thing is, when the actual negative thing happens, you'll be able to face nicely. So less happiness with less sadness. You don't face that, you have extreme happiness, but the other side of the coin is a very bitter, strong sadness. So it's up to you, up to us to decide whether to go with the moderate happiness and moderate sadness, or to go extreme happiness and extreme sadness. Yeah. Right, so we are done with the questions, right?
There are a few more questions on in the chat.
So
But it depends on how much time
make a
you
rule that do not post any new questions. So we'll go with these two. Okay. Final.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Ask a few questions in the chat.
Okay. The audience is a request. Don't post new questions. It's getting late here. I just want to take rest also. Right. Okay. Next question. Yes.
Are you able to see the chat?
Yeah, I'll answer the remaining two. Yeah.
Okay.
But no not more new
Okay.
new questions. Can you read it out? Yes.
You want me to read? I can read it.
Yeah.
It's from Ruini, my cousin. Are there tips to practice mindfulness of our active consciousness in our daily lives as we interact with others, having an understanding of what we are feeling, a form of vipassana that is not limited to vipassana meditation while sitting down?
Yeah, it's practical tips means to be aware of the natures, like for example, vipassana meditation is deep contemplation actually. So whenever we encounter someone or something, we have to always put it into the realities and see the realities. For example, if someone is scolding at us, you have to contemplate that this is just the anger is functioning, and you will start to feel it. And if anger arises in us, we have noted that anger has arisen, and it's just an anger. It's not that I got angry. It's not that I became angry, or it's not an anger of myself. It's just the state of anger. It's a mental fact of anger. And if someone is angry at us, mad at us, so say it's just another mental factor. It's not a person who is angry at us. So likewise, whenever we meet someone or whenever we experience something, we have to contemplate on, because we are not going to see anything. Buddhism is not like seeing through, like you see the things through a microscope or anything. So we always have to change our way of thinking, of mind, to see the reality. Then you can ask the question, is vipassana thinking? Yes, it's deep thinking. Thinking means it's a conscious activity. So best way to say is thinking. Like you have to direct your mind to the reality and to see things, to understand things as they are, not as a self, not as something belonging to someone. So instead of now, for example, if we see someone who is attractive, we want to get our mind out of lust, to consider that you are just seeing a color, or you're just seeing the 32 body parts. So likewise, when we have proper contemplation again and again, that would be the practical vipassana meditation that we will be doing. So sometimes you may be confused by the information that vipassana is focusing on the present moment object. It's just a technique of vipassana. Please keep that in mind. In vipassana meditation, sometimes you will be focusing on your sensations, so sometimes you will be focusing on the sounds and whatever object that you get. This is not the entire scope of vipassana. It's just a practical way of doing of one certain technique actually. So even in that technique, in the back of your mind, you should have the idea that you are seeing just natures. So that's what the Mahasi Sayadaw has introduced this technique, which became worldwide, popular in the world, to get into the Vipassana track in a certain way. So that doesn't cover the entire scope. You can get liberated through that path, but don't keep that kind of wise contemplation. It's not a Vipassana. That's how Vipassana was done in most of the Theravada schools. So therefore, if you want to apply it in practical life, rather than contemplating on seeing, or hearing, which you can do it in a sitting meditation, you can always contemplate as when you see someone as 32 body parts, try to bring it to your mind, try to focus, like no need to zoom at the other person, then you would have a misunderstanding of what you're doing looking at someone. So try to contemplate that there's a constitution of 32 body parts, or just you are seeing the color. Like someone, if you can feel the feelings of someone, they're just the emotion. They are just emotions. They are not the feelings of someone or some person. If feelings comes in you, okay, their feelings are arising due to causes. So we can contemplate in this manner. So that would be the practical vipassana that I would advise, in short.
Thank you, Bhante. And then, I guess the last question is
Yeah.
actually from my brother, Mullin Weerakoon. It was his birthday a few days ago.
Okay.
He asks, does the karma from the most recent life take priority in determining our next life, our next rebirth? Or is it determined by the summation of all past lives?
Yes. In most of the cases, the karmas that we have done in this life, there's a very high possibility that would determine the next life. But there are occasions in which very, very past life karmas have played a role and given a rebirth. Especially happens when we are born in certain states, like, for example, if you are born in the divine realm, what they do is mostly they enjoy the divine pleasures. So they don't do any strong good or bad deeds. So what happens is rebirth is mostly determined by the karmas that were done in the past. Now think about a child who dies in the womb. He has no opportunity to do any good or bad, right? So therefore, the next birth, what happens to the child? The child was born already in the womb and he had a consciousness. And when he died, and he has to be born according to Buddhism. And what sort of a karma gave the next birth? It has to be a karma in a past life, whatever. We call such karmas katatta karma. So it's not guaranteed that one would be born in the next life due to karma done in this very life. It's not that everyone is born due to karma in the very past life, immediate past life. There are possibilities that one would be born in past life due to karmas in the past lives. So therefore, it comes to the next point that you cannot guarantee your next destination, the family you are born into, and all this, unless you are a sotapana or you are a noble being. Yes, that's true. Because as a Putujjana, possibilities are there. All the gates of the 31 realms are open to us. Then, but what we have to keep in mind is our next destination is mostly secured based on the Buddha's teachings if we maintain a good sila. That's the most important point. There is a sutra in the Anguttara Nikaya in which Buddha said to Janissoni, Brahmin Janissoni, that there are some people who make donations but doesn't practice a good sila. So their destination could be most probably will be in a bad realm. Even he is born in a good realm due to good karma of giving, he will not have a proper birth with defects. When I mean sila, especially killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and all this. So in a very high level, actually in our day-to-day life, most of the Buddhists doesn't do such bad deeds. Yes, sometimes they do lie, sometimes they sometimes cheat. Cheat means like evade taxes, or sometimes do some like doesn't pay the actual amount to be paid, or these kind of bad behaviors may be possible. I'm not encouraging them, but mostly Buddha was talking about very severe offenses like killing animals, animal slaughter and all this. But killing pests, yes, that's a serious thing, if you consider. So therefore, if you can maintain a sila, most of us would need not to worry about the next life. That would be my advice. Yes, even a person with high sila, if things change at the moment of death, can be born in the bad realm. There are very exceptional, rare cases, but those are rare cases. Buddha was very clear on this. If you practice sila, you will be born in a good realm. That's a guarantee that he had given. That's a guarantee that he had given. So therefore, we need not to worry about our next rebirth much if we can maintain a good sila. So in that regard, it shows that the next birth is mostly determined by the deeds that we do in this life. But if the person has not done very strong, good or bad deeds in a certain life, there is a possibility that the person may be born due to another karma in a past life. So possibility is there. Okay, then we'll conclude our session. So I hope you got some insights with the Dhamma talk. So this talk was organized and sponsored by Charita Weerakoon and Saranath Weerakoon, right? Saranath Weerakoon. So I wish both of them a happy life and also good health in order to follow their all noble wishes. And also this talk was organized to celebrate the April birthday of Mullin. Yes, Mullin. Okay. Mullin Weerakoon, their beloved son. And I wish him all the best in his new year, which he began in April. That may be able to be successful in his career and pursue all these sublime wishes. And the late mother, Samlin, no? Samlin Kulatilake. May she rejoice on her daughter's good merits, and if in any case, if she's having some troubles in samsara, may she be free from that and also attain a good destination, a good realm, and also good destination, and also be free from the samsara as soon as possible. And also this Dhamma talk was organized to aid Reverend Bante giving the sermon, and coordinating staff, including Mr. Prasad Disoisa, and also all spiritual friends in their noble journey towards the realization of Nibbana. And also to help all current and future listeners of the Dhamma talk in their spiritual journey to the realization of Nibbana. So I wish all the best to Mrs. Charita and Mr. Saranath Weerakoon by this merit of organizing a Dhamma talk, out of which many could benefit by listening to the noble teachings of the Buddha. May you get more and more Dhamma knowledge, and may you be able to pursue your spiritual happiness, spiritual paths as you wish, and to be liberated from the samsara as soon as possible. And your beloved two sons and also the family members, may they all be happy in this very life, in the coming lives, and also may attain Nibbana as soon as possible. And all the listeners who had listened for a few hours, the Dhamma talk and the Q&A session, may everyone be able to be happy, healthy, and gain the spiritual happiness in this very life, in the coming lives, and also to attain the Nirvana. So we shall share merits with our deceased relatives and all the deities. Idango nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idango nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idango nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Akasattha cha bhummatta devanaga mahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkhantu sambuddha sasanang. Akasattha cha bhummatta බුම්මත්තා දේවා නාග මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත्वा චිරන් රක්ඛන්තු සම්බුද්ධ දේශනං ආකාසට්ටා ච බුම්මත්තා දේවා නාග මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත्वा චිරන් රක්ඛන්තු සම්බුද්ධ ශාවකං චිරං රක්ඛන්තු ත්වං සදායිමිනා පුඤ්ඤ කම්මේන මාමේ බාල සමාගමෝ සතං සමාගමෝ හෝතු යාව නිබ්බාන පත්තියායිමිනා පුඤ්ඤ කම්මේන මාමේ බාල සමාගමෝ සතං සමාගමෝ හෝතු යාව නිබ්බාන පත්තියායිමිනා පුඤ්ඤ කම්මේන මාමේ බාල සමාගමෝ සතං සමාගමෝ හෝතු යාව නිබ්බාන පත්තියාය ධම්මේ පුඤ්ඤ කම්මං ආසවක්ඛයා වහං හෝතු ධම්මේ පුඤ්ඤ කම්මං ආසවක්ඛයා වහං හෝතු ඉදම්මේ පුඤ්ඤ කම්මං ආසවක්ඛයා වහං හෝතු සබ්බ දුක්ඛා පමුඤ්චතු